Putin says a real war is being waged against Russia. Japan-Korea-US plan to link radar system. Canada and China expel each other's diplomats. China warns of strong reaction if EU sanctions its companies. France to propose a bill to regulate influencer industry. NZ Auckland declares flood emergency. Tens of thousands join protests over shootings in Serbia. USS Nimitz will leave the service in 2026.
Hello, I'm Wade Lee. Thank you for joining us on Funday News. It is Wednesday, May 10th, and here are your top stories. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday said a real war was again being waged against Russia as he invoked the Soviet Union's victory in World War II to say the West was trying to destroy his country. Putin's remarks came just hours after Moscow fired its latest barrage of cruise missiles at targets in Ukraine, which has been partially occupied by Russia for more than 14 months. Ukrainian authorities later said air defense systems destroyed 23 of 25 missiles launched on Russian Victory Day.
Putin said at the annual commemorations celebrating the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II, a real war has been unleashed against our motherland. Some 8,000 troops took part in the parade in Moscow's Red Square on Tuesday, the lowest number since 2008. Even the procession in 2020, the year of the COVID-19 pandemic, featured some 13,000 soldiers, and last year, 11,000 troops took part. There was no flyover of military jets, and the event lasted less than the usual hour.
The Yomiuri Shimbun reported on Tuesday that the US, Japan, and South Korea are planning to link their radar system to better track missiles from North Korea and potentially speed up their response to a launch by Pyongyang. A broad agreement on the plan is likely to come after a joint defense meeting in Singapore in June. Under the agreement, the command and control center used by the militaries of Japan and South Korea, as well as U.S. forces in both countries, would be fed through the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command in Hawaii.
The media said the arrangement would be one of the most tangible efforts to improve joint efforts to keep track of North Korean missiles. Yomiuri noted South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has taken on China by telling Beijing that the possible operation of Lockheed Martin Corp's THAAD system was a matter of South Korea's self-defense and not negotiable. Beijing objects to the shield over concerns its powerful radar would allow spying on its own missile systems.
On Monday, Canada expelled Toronto-based Chinese diplomat Zhao Wei after an intelligence report accused him of trying to target a Canadian lawmaker critical of China's treatment of its Uyghur Muslim minority. Spy agency Canadian Security Intelligence Service authored a report in 2021 about potential treatment to conservative members of Parliament Michael Zhuang and his family by Chinese diplomats. Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly said on Monday, "We will not tolerate any form of foreign interference."
Following Canada's move, China's foreign ministry on Tuesday said China was deploying a reciprocal countermeasure to Canada's unscrupulous move, which it said it firmly opposes. It said the Canadian diplomat based in the business hub of Shanghai has been asked to leave by May 13th and that China reserves the right to take further actions in response. A senior Canadian government official said Toronto-based diplomat Zhao Wei has 5 days to leave the country.
China's Foreign Ministry, Qin Gang, warns EU China will react strictly and strongly to any penalties imposed on its companies by the European Union for supplying Russia with so-called dual-use goods that can be used for both military and civilian purposes. The EU's executive arm has proposed extending strict trade restrictions to several Chinese companies as it tries to crack down on firms supplying the Kremlin with banned goods and technology that have aided its war machine in Ukraine.
Asked about the prospect of sanctions after talks in Berlin with his German counterpart on Tuesday, Qin said, "We strictly oppose any one-sided sanctions against China." He added, "If that were the case, we would react strictly and strongly to them. We will also defend the legitimate and legal interests of our country and our companies." The European Commission says companies targeted are directly supporting Russia's military and industrial complex in its war of aggression.
Time on my own, I just thought I'd take care of your blessings with your heartaches too. It's so easy and so wonderful to know it's you.
学习，一切从今天开始。Funday 英语。
France is set to become the first country in the world to legally define what an influencer is, as new legislation proposed by MP Stéphane Bouguette and MP Arthur Delaporte aims to crack down on the types of products and services creators can advertise to their followers. The bill, which the government says is the first to provide a regulatory framework around influencing in Europe, was adopted by the lower chamber of France's Assemblée nationale in late March, and is likely to pass a looming Senate vote in May.
They count their followers in the millions, but France's content creators, as they'd rather be known, are still exploring all the potential of their virtual sway.
In its current form, the resulting legislation will ban influencers from promoting cosmetic surgery, financial products and services such as cryptocurrencies, and counterfeit products. It will also force creators to disclose when they place filters on photos and videos that are ads. For promotions that involve gambling or betting, posters will be required to include an informational banner about the risks. French influencers are already required to specify in their post's description if they are paid to promote a brand or product.
Auckland, New Zealand has declared a state of emergency after torrential rain caused widespread flooding. Heavy rainfall on Tuesday filled basements, stranded cars, toppled trees, and disrupted rail services. The same area was hit by record rainfall in January, and Cyclone Gabrielle a month later. The torrential rain are expected to last until Wednesday evening local time. Rescuers are also searching for a high school student missing in a flooded cave north of the city.
From January to April, the Auckland region received 90% of its average total annual rainfall, with some areas receiving up to 35 millimeters of rain in just 1 hour. The New Zealand Meteorological Service's Georgina Griffiths said, "The region is very saturated after a very rough 5 months. We're pretty soggy." Authorities advised people to postpone unnecessary travel and avoid driving on flooded streets. Late in January, torrential rains and flooding left 4 people dead and parts of Auckland's main airport submerged.
Tens of thousands of Serbs have joined protests against gun violence in the capital Belgrade and another city after 2 mass shootings last week. 17 people died in the shooting last Wednesday and Thursday, including 8 children in a primary school. The protesters are demanding that top government officials resign and want newspapers and TV stations that promote violence to be shut down. Serbia's president, Aleksandar Vučić, condemned the protests.
Žalosno je da se sahranjuju deca, toliko dece se sahranjuju u kratkom vremenskom periodu.
Crowds marched through the center of the city behind a banner that read, "Serbia against violence." A schoolteacher told the crowd, "We are here because we can't wait any longer. We've been silent too long. We've turned our heads too long." Thousands also turned out across the northern city of Novi Sad, where protests threw flowers into the Danube River which flows to the capital. The protesters called for the resignation of the interior minister and the head of Serbia's intelligence agency.
The U.S. Navy will decommission 2 nuclear aircraft carriers and 2 independent-class littoral combat ships, which will go up for sale to foreign militaries. The USS Nimitz will leave the service in 2026, while the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower will retire a year later. It's part of a long-term effort for the U.S. to modernize its current fleet of approximately 485 ships. Over the past few decades, the 2 aircraft carriers heading to the chopping block have played significant roles in military conflicts.
Salt has been sailing since 1975, making it the oldest, but still one of the most impressive carriers in the fleet.
On December 19, 1995, the USS Nimitz and her battle group passed through the Taiwan Strait in the Third Taiwan Strait crisis. The 48-year-old USS Nimitz was commissioned in 1975 and built for a 50-year service life. It is one of the largest warships in the world. It can carry up to 90 fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters, and has a crew of about 6,000 personnel. The Nimitz will sail to a Virginia shipyard after its last deployment to begin the complex deactivation process which involves removing its nuclear fuel.
Now, let's take a look at the vocabulary from the news of the bill to regulate influencer industry. Number 1, crackdown on something. 接力取缔某物. The House voted today to crack down on banks that launder drug money. Number 2, 赫然出现, 显得突出, a dark shape loomed up ahead of us. Number 3, counterfeit, 伪造的,仿造的. Are you aware these notes are counterfeit? And that's all for today's Funday news. Be sure to tune into Funday's news from Monday to Friday and click the link below now to join Funday for free. I'm Wade Lee, your host. I'll see you next time.